All right, so I got this Ask HershNoeie, and I'm not going to make it last as long as the other one. I'm going to try not to. But they said, "Hi, HershNoeie. I'm from Bellevue, Washington. I love my city. I was raised here. However, I noticed that you talk about the growth in Seattle and the growth in Tacoma. Excuse me. And you are somewhat critical of Bellevue. Bellevue recently, along with all of the development that we're getting from Amazon and Facebook, a huge multi-million dollar investment is going on downtown. It's going to be a large project. Is there some sort of jealousy towards Bellevue?" He goes on to say that Amazon's also putting one of the tallest structures there, which is going to be 600 feet. Sorry. It's going to be over 600 feet tall. He says some other stuff. You take people to task when they talk negative about Tacoma, but why do you feel it's okay to talk negative about Bellevue? That's a good question. That's a good question. Make sure you join our Discord, which is going to be down in the description box below. Let me first say this. I don't claim Tacoma like, I'm some sort of a gangster or, in a gang or something. What I talk about is that people have a perception that if you don't live in certain places, that you will, you're going to face the wrath of danger. That basically, if you live in Tacoma, it's going to be this way and that way, and it stinks all the time, and blah, blah, blah. So I made videos about Tacoma to show the reality. Not false reality, but reality. I wanted people to be able to make an educated guess as to should they live here, should they live there, where should they live, but I wanted them to be able to have the facts. The facts are Bellevue and Seattle are very expensive. Bellevue is more expensive than Seattle, period. When it comes to cities that offer more of a, in my opinion, better quality of life if you have a family, yeah, I do agree that it's going to be Tacoma out of Seattle and Bellevue. Now, there may be some other little cities here and there that people can argue are probably better. I'm talking about the big three, okay? Or even you can throw Everett in there if you want to. I still say Tacoma's going to beat it. The reason why is because Tacoma is somewhat like Seattle in the respect that the number of parks that it has, the size of those parks, the museums that it has, the transportation system, which here is minuscule compared to Seattle, but it's getting there. The vibe, you get a city vibe. That's what I'm talking about, right? Bellevue is basically an edge city, and some people say it's basically Seattle's east side. So they're saying it's basically Seattle, but it's east side Seattle, even though that's not the case. It's its own city. And Bellevue is not going to be on most people's radar. Because if you were born and raised there, Bellevue at the time was not hoity-toity as much. It's different because, people bought their houses, and so they're riding that economic wave up, and that's great for them. But most people who are moving to this area from other parts of the country cannot afford Bellevue. It's just, these are facts. They're not going to be able to do that. And yes, you do have, and it's not Amazon building the 600-foot tall building. It's actually Vulcan, which is owned by the late Paul Allen, his real estate company, right? But Bellevue is getting a lot of development. You're right about that. Absolutely. Facebook, Amazon, bunch of them, Microsoft, all of them. They're heading there in record numbers. But Bellevue is not without its own issues. And it's not me talking negative about Bellevue. I'm just speaking facts. It's not without its issues. Just because these companies choose a new location to go and they kind of abandoned Seattle, not entirely, but they've focused on Bellevue a bit, doesn't mean that their issues are going to disappear. It still costs more to do business in Bellevue than it does in Tacoma. I mean, I own a business, and I can tell you that I can complain all day about the taxes I pay, but I'd rather pay the taxes here than I would what's up in Seattle or Bellevue. These are facts. And if you are a small business or a micro business and you're trying to get started up in Bellevue, good luck. I mean, if everybody's going there in terms of big companies and a lot of development, all you see is glass buildings going up everywhere, that should give you an idea that it's super expensive. Now, if you have a house already, great for you, because you're just going to be the value of that house is going to keep going up, but so will the taxes. You know what I'm saying? Bellevue, the thing is, Bellevue doesn't have a huge population. It has a relatively small population. Let's take a look, because somebody's going to say that's not true. Actually, they have such and such. So I'm going to give you the population of Bellevue. And what I want you to focus on is the fact that Bellevue was never intended to be a big city. It's and the same issues that plague Seattle in terms of driving, roads that are limited in size, parking issues, all of that stuff is the same things that's going to affect Bellevue. Right? Same things. Because it was never designed to handle that. Now, Bellevue has about 150,000 people as a population. So it's a pretty decent size. 150,000 people. But the growth of that city in terms of population is not going to be as fast as in other places because it is expensive. They talk about, and this is from Wikipedia, which I wrote Wikipedia articles, but they're saying based on the census, okay, the census in 2010, Bellevue had a population of 122,363. And in 2019, the estimate was 148,164. Okay? So in that 10-year time frame, it got like 26,000 people in 10 years. That's pretty darn good, right? Well, let's go down and see if we can find exactly. Well, yeah, so it still gives the estimate. It doesn't tell us exactly what 2020 shows in general, right? But 21% growth is pretty good. That's not uncommon. The city has grown in leaps and bounds in different time frames, right? Back in 1950, it only had 7,656. Then 1960, 12,809. And then from 1960 to 1970, it was just boomtown, 61,000 people. So it went from 12 to 61,000 people, right? That also happens to be around the time frame Microsoft. And now you're seeing again this boom, this big, huge burst. And part of this, hold on a second, I gotta see something, is due to obviously more development, right? More development. And you have a lot of people moving there because of jobs, but they have to be able to afford to live there. I'm not necessarily speaking negative about Bellevue. Bellevue has a lot of good qualities, but mainly it is a city for newcomers that are in the tech field, right? Mainly. Just because the cost of living is so expensive, the cost to buy a home is so expensive, it's just a much more expensive area of the region, to live in. It's not the most expensive, but it's up there. With that said, I mentioned Tacoma because it has gotten nothing but negative flack. Nationally, locally, it's gotten a lot of negative flack. You don't hear that as much now because it can kind of stand on its own. And it is standing on its own. I think that with respect to Bellevue, there's been a lot of protests and stuff going on. You know, Seattle has protests and stuff like that, and they've made the national news. But those protests now have went to Bellevue. Why? Don't know. Tacoma, not so much. We had a couple of protests, but they really barely did much of anything. But it has been a big issue up in Bellevue and in Seattle. And that doesn't go unnoticed when it comes to people who want to move there. Do I think that the scale is tilted a little bit and you have a lot more assets going to Bellevue that could be fanned out to other places? Yeah. Do I agree that Sound Transit should focus on building to Bellevue before it does other places? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. But Sound Transit views it as this is a city that is highly critical for the entire region's economy. And I agree with that. I agree with that. But also, a port city like Tacoma is extremely important as well. It's the biggest port in the Puget Sound region. And I think you should take pride in your city. I think Bellevue is a great city. It's just out of the reach for most people. It's not me being critical. It's just me being factual. It's out of the reach of most people. It's not heavily diverse. You see what I'm saying? So for some people, that is an extremely important thing. They want to be in a city that they don't feel out of place. Bellevue, I always feel so out of place. So out of place. In Seattle, I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel that way. I don't feel that way down here in Tacoma. It just feels much more comfortable down here to me. People I have brought here have also said the same thing. They just feel more comfortable here in Tacoma. I don't know. It depends. It really depends on, life experiences. But no, I don't necessarily have any issue against Bellevue. It's just I think it is an expensive place that really and truly doesn't offer you a quality of life that most people are probably used to or that they're wanting. I think people want to go there because they have this perception that necessarily crime is going to be less and the schools are going to be better. That's not always the case, right? Not saying that those things aren't always true, that those things aren't true, right? But I'm just saying that there are good quality schools down here too in Tacoma. You see what I'm saying? There are areas of Tacoma that are also very safe also. You get what I'm saying? So anyhow, I hope I answered your question. This is not attacking a city. I'm not claiming one city over the other. But I want to make sure people have the information that they need. Bellevue gets plenty of advertising from Facebook and Amazon. They get plenty of advertising. Same with Seattle. They get plenty of advertising. Places like Everett and Tacoma and Issaquah and Sammamish and Kent and Federal Way and Bremerton and Edmonds, those places, Marysville, you hardly hear anything about those places. And some of those I don't know enough about to talk about, but I do know quite a bit about the big three. I know the most about Seattle and Tacoma, so I'm going to talk more about those. But I feel like Tacoma needs that advertising. It needs that advertising. So anyhow, I'm not trying to offend anybody. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you join the Discord, like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I will see you. Take care.